This is Anime Ricochet. Hello everyone, welcome to Anime Ricochet, the premier anime podcast of the Nerd Blaze. My name is Jeff, and with me, as always, is the MVP of this podcast. His name is Jacoby, aka Kobe. Welcome to the show, Kobe.
You've warmed my heart, Jeff. That is so nice. Thanks. I appreciate it. Unless MVP stands for something that I don't know, something sinister.
It's a racial slur.
Oh no. No, never mind. I take it back. It was a very mean thing to say.
And on that note, this is the MVP episode.
The MVP episode. Woo! Those of you who've been listening to us for a while, which I'm sure there are many of you, we're breaking format this time because we decided to just have a little fun with this month's episode and kind of go back and talk about all the MVPs of the past sports animes. Because that's something we didn't really talk about and something we wanted to start implementing. So, Jeff, what does an MVP mean to you?
Besides the racial slur, MVP stands for... Actually, what does MVP stand for? Most very person?
Most varied person. Yeah, it's close. Most valuable player, silly.
Oh, right. Most valuable player. If you don't know, this is Anime Ricochet, the podcast where two guys who know nothing about sports talk about sports animes. So, of course, I didn't know what MVP is, but Kobe did his homework. Anyways,
right
the MVP,
before, literally 2 minutes before this.
Very, very good. The MVP to me is the character that either brought the anime to the next level, or it's basically just my favorite character, I would say. In some way elevates the show, either from like a shitty show to a show that's tolerable, or from like a really good show to a show that just kind of transcends beyond. What does it mean to you, Kobe?
I completely agree. I think an MVP either saves a really bad anime or takes a really good anime and vaults it into greatness just on the strength of this one character. The MVP sometimes is a great team player. That works to build on the greatness of the other characters. Sometimes the MVP player is just the only good character in one of the shows. Sometimes an MVP episode is just someone who I just like out of personal bias. Like it's very varied, as to call back the word that you used earlier. So yeah, I think that's what MVP means to me.
So yeah, we're gonna be going through every single anime we've reviewed so far from the very beginning, and these are the animes that we're going to be talking about. We've got Ping Pong the Animation, Yuri on Ice, Chihaya Faru, Kaijo, Haikyuu, Baby Steps, Prince of Stride, Kuroko no Basket, Free, Welcome to the Ballroom, and All Out. And just as a warning, we are going to be talking about spoilers for all these animes. I mean, I don't think we're going to be doing anything like any major plot points, but if you don't want to know anything about any of these animes,
why are you listening to podcasts in the first place?
Yeah, you silly nugget.
Nugget? You silly nuggets.
But yeah, like I said, there'll be timestamps in the description if you just want to skip and jump around to the anime that you want to listen to us talk to. So yeah, anything else, Kobe?
I'm ready to dive into this wacky adventure.
All right, Len, let's begin with our very, very first anime that we reviewed, which is Ping Pong the Animation.
Man, what a time.
I know.
That was our very first one, back when we were just young pups.
We were so young, so naive. Now we're old and wise and cynical. You're cynical now.
I'm more cynical now. I wonder if I watched Ping Pong, if I would hate it. I probably wouldn't.
Give it a 1
Ping Pong still remains probably the best out of any of the anime, just because it tells that complete story.
Yeah, it's definitely in the top 3 of the ones that we've watched so far. It's 11 episodes of tight goodness, and there's a lot of good characters in this show, actually. But which one stood out the most to you, Kobe? Who's your MVP?
My MVP of Ping Pong the Animation, because you're right, it's tough. All these characters, I think you could justifiably argue to be a spot on the list. But to me, it's definitely Kong. Kong is the MVP of Ping Pong because of the way that his storyline is introduced at the beginning. He's introduced as a major player, but then kind of falls to be like, his story kind of runs parallel to like the main character's quests, and he kind of interweaves sporadically throughout it until his final conclusion, where it's kind of sad but also hopeful. But overall, his story is really great on its own. It's just nice. It makes me feel good about my, good inside, a warm pit inside whenever I think of Kong and his arc from beginning to end. And I don't think Ping Pong, it still would have been a great anime, but I don't think it would have been as great without him.
Yeah, Kong is, for a side character, well, I guess I'm not even sure if you can call him a side character. He's kind of like the main quartet, or part of the main quartet of characters.
But he's number 4 on that list for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And but even despite that, he has, like you said, a very, very good development. He starts off as like this really cocky dude. He's like the outsider. He's kind of a stranger in a strange land, but like eventually he learns to be more humble, and he learns to accept defeat with some grace, and that's very satisfying to watch. And in terms of like who gets to be the most successful ping pong player at the very end of the show, he gets to be one of them. He once we're in the epilogue, you see Skimoto, you see Kazuma, and they're kind of, Kazuma's sort of on his way out. He's not on the top of his game anymore. Skimoto is teaching kids. Peiko is, he really wanted to play ping pong, and he got there. But Kong also was able to eventually become a representative at the Olympics. And I also think it's very symbolic, his growth, because he starts out as a foreigner. He's from China, and he goes to Japan, and he doesn't like it there. He hates it. He hates the fact that he has to play with like these lowly Japanese commoners in a way. But at the very end of the epilogue, you notice that he has become a citizen of Japan, and he has a Japanese name. And if I'm not mistaken, I think he becomes representative of Japan for the Olympics, if I'm not mistaken. So I just think that was really cool.
No, you're right.
He really grew to be humble and acclimate himself to his new place of his new home, basically. And I thought that was really cool.
Agreed. I love animes when kind of villains, all of a sudden they reach a moment, right, where you kind of realize what makes them click, or we mine them for a depth that we hadn't seen before, that we didn't imagine. Because Kong just seems like the bad guy at first, and he seems like you get the sense in the first episode that he hates being here no matter what. But then you find out how human he is in whatever episode it is, when you find out that he really just misses his mom and he misses home, and he's so angry because he blew his chance. He did something really bad. He got kicked out of China
for some
we don't know what it is.
For some unheard reason.
Some unheard of reason. And he's trying to fight so hard to get back home. That's why he's driven by the fact that he needs to be the best, because he has everything on the line. But even when he loses, because obviously he can't win because he's not our protagonist, he finds a new purpose in his loss. Like he finds these the school that he's with, and he finds like a new family. And I think the moment that I keep going back to with Kong is one of my favorite Kong moments, is when it seems real throwaway at first, when his mom is there and they're cooking the rice balls, or they're cooking whatever specialty it is. And
Chinese food.
Wontons, yeah. And they're like walking by, the teammates are walking by, and all of a sudden, one by one, they all start joining him. And pretty soon it's a whole kitchen worth of both his old family and his new family together. And they're all working in congruence. And he's like happy, and Kong is happy. And that moment is one of my favorites of the show. And it's my favorite Kong moment out of many great Kong moments.
Yeah, I generally love characters whose life, I guess, didn't turn out the way they thought it would, but was still able to make the most of it. And I guess another example of this is like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if you ever watched Dragon Ball Z, but like I
didn't, but I know Vegeta's character.
Yeah, he's a great example of that. And so I get some Vegeta-ish vibes from Kong, and that's kind of why I like him, because Vegeta is one of my favorite characters in Dragon Ball Z as well. Yeah, that's Kong from Ping Pong.
That's Kong. Congratulations, Kong. You've won Anime Ricochet's very first MVP award.
From both Jeff and Kobe. So yeah, we agree on this one.
We agree on this one. Oh, good. I'm sure we're gonna agree so much throughout the rest of this.
So the next anime on the list is Yuri on Ice. And that was our very second anime review. I have fond memories of Yuri on Ice. It has probably one of the best OPs, both in terms of its animation and just the song. Great soundtrack, great animation. It was a joy to watch, wouldn't you say?
I would agree. I think it's a very fun one. I think I liked it a little bit more than you, but it's a very easy watch. It's very easy to get through the 12 episodes, I think there are or so. Yeah.
Yeah, so my MVP for this one was Christophe Giacometti. So Christophe, he's the saucy man. He's the guy who literally jizzes his pants in the middle of an ice skating routine, and that's why I love this guy, because he's sexy and he knows it. And I don't know, his confidence is so over the top that it reaches comical levels, and like the way they frame his dance and animate him as he's doing that, his facial expression, the way that like the camera zooms in, it's like perfectly positioned on like his ass and like his bulge and like his like leotard or whatever. It's hilarious. He was a very energetic character, and he's the kind of ice skater that I think I would enjoy watching like in real life. And I also like enjoyed his like small rivalry with Victor. I thought that was kind of cool, like because he wasn't able to compete against Victor like he wanted to. But like part of his motivation for putting his whole heart out there is to sort of inspire Victor to come back so that they can compete against each other. So yeah, he's just a really cool character.
Christoph is a great character. He injects something new to the anime when he's introduced. It's like kind of fun. He's funny and he's sexy. He's that passionate type of loving, mature love that I think was missing from it before. Like he brings something new to the anime. And I think as well-rounded of an anime as Yuri on Ice is, Christoph is definitely a highlight when he's injected into the story, because I like everything he brings to all of these characters, especially as you mentioned his rivalry with Victor.
Yeah, and in a cast of characters that are all pretty much confident. I think really the only one that is lacking in confidence is Yuri, which is the main character, Japanese Yuri. Everyone else is just dripping with like this certainty and like just like this is huge level of confidence in their abilities. And even amongst this cast of very big characters, I think Christoph is still able to like push himself to the forefront in terms of being just a very unique ice skater.
He stands out.
He does stand out.
Yeah, and speaking of confidence, that's a good segue into my MVP of the episode, because my MVP of Yuri on Ice also drips with confidence every which way. It is, of course, the one, the only King JJ, the man who's so cocky and so arrogant. He has his own song that he wrote himself to skate to. It's called The Ballad of King JJ. It's about how he's the best, he's the king, and he's the character with all the fans, with a gorgeous fiance who loves him, and he knows he's the best and he's going to win and take this no problem whatsoever. But what I like about King JJ is the fact that, I guess, let me back up a little bit. In animes, when characters are so overpowered, right? When enemies are so overpowered and they're introduced to be so overpowered, oftentimes at the end of the anime, the protagonist will just find a way to beat him just because they believe more or something, or the protagonist who was so good doesn't perform, or like the antagonist, someone like King JJ, doesn't perform as good as he did at the beginning. And you're like, well, that's just lazy writing. Like, you made your antagonist weaker, or the protagonist just through sheer will beat them, like with no explanation whatsoever. What I liked about King JJ is that he's introduced as the powerhouse. Like, he's going to win it all. Like, he scores, I think, number 1 on his free program and short program in the first tournament. And he's like, they don't know how they're going to beat him. But then it changes when it's finally all on the line. His cockiness kind of catches up to him, and he kind of feels the pressure for like the first time. It's like, oh shit, I need to perform. I need to do good. He makes one mistake, and he's like, oh, that's not like me. And then it kind of continues to snowball and get out of control. And he slowly spirals down. And that could have been his downfall. Like, that could have been the end of King JJ, and that he could have been a real one-note character. It's like, oh, and then that was it. But what I like what the show did is that he worked to build himself back up again from that. And it gave him both a victory without him like winning the whole thing, but still made it satisfying to his character. Like, once he's down and like near the bottom for so long, he thinks to himself, man, maybe if I'm lucky, all the other competitors will make a mistake and I could still land on that podium. It's like, no, wait, I'm King JJ. I'm not going to win by luck. I'm going to win because I deserve to be there. And from that moment, he built himself back up to place third which I think is fitting, and it allows Yuri and Yurio to take the first and second spot while still giving King JJ a win and to make him a really interesting character. Very long way of saying I like King JJ.
Yeah, that was very eloquent. I like that. Yeah, I don't know what to say. That's a really good description of King JJ as being the MVP.
And he's from Canada.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know where Chris. It could be a good or bad thing. I don't know. They ice skate there a lot. Where's Christoph from?
I have no idea. He seems like a Swiss guy.
Giamatti, yeah.
But yeah.
And I love his song. I have his song on my Spotify, and I listen to it at least once a week.
You still do? Dang.
I still do. Still once a week.
That's awesome.
Ballad of King JJ. Whenever I need like a pick me up. Ballad of King JJ, baby.
All right, well, let's move on to the next anime, which is Chihaya Faru. So this is an anime that I think it's the first anime, and probably even one of the only animes where I think you and I have quite a bit of contention with. Like, you really like it, and I really didn't like it.
It is definitely the biggest split out of any of our animes.
Yeah, and we still refer to it frequently, and it seems seems in at least every other episode we mention Chihaya Faru. For one reason or another, and it has a very unique sport of karate, which is basically like this card game which relies on memorization and speed and reflexes, precision,
and heart and
endurance,
spirit and dedication
as well.
Endurance,
core strength.
It's a real, you need that.
It needs a style. You need to wear like a nice kimonos for tournaments and stuff.
Yeah, you need all that. It's a very fancy, very legit. There's a king and the queen.
So, yeah, the reason I didn't really like Chihaya Faru was that I think there was a lot of potential in it, and it just never reached that level. And mostly it's bogged down by the main character herself, Chihaya. I don't think Chihaya was able to carry this series on her shoulders. I think she lacked growth, development, likability, consistency, and that really hurt it. And I think if the anime stayed where they were children, because in the first 3 or 4 episodes, you get like a flashback sequence of where they all meet, when the trio of characters meet, and then they play karate together, and that's really fun and that's really great. But when they all grow up, they all become really boring, including Chihaya's what's the dude's name?
Tai Chi.
Starts with
Tai Chi.
Yeah.
Who is the MVP?
Okay, so Taichi's your MVP. My MVP would be Arata, but we'll talk about it. So why did you like it then, Kobe?
So yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. Except I think every word that what you said was wrong. I think Chihara. Chihara is the perfect protagonist for the show. She is the anchor that keeps this team together. Her passion and her spirit and her willingness to continue playing Karuta inspires those around her to play and to find like the joy and the love and the passion for the sport itself. Not just in the sport, but for, their own lives as well, because all good sports animes aren't about, just them playing the sports. It's, it says something personal about them. She teaches all of these players through the act of Karuta how to, to fight for things themselves and to go after what they dream about and to follow their passions to the very bitter end, no matter what. Chihara is light. She's bubbly. She is dumb at times. Yes, I will grant that she is, because she's single-mindedly driven by the fact that she just wants to play Karuta. But I like that element about her because I just think that that's interesting to have your lead character so focused on the act of Karuta that through sheer force of will, she'll play Karuta no matter what. And I like how it's different than other animes, because usually when you have characters who are like so driven with something, they're also really smart and they can manage other things. Something like Baby Steps, where he becomes really good at tennis, but then he's still really smart and he uses his skills from school to play tennis. But for Chihara, she's dumb and she knows it. She knows that the only thing that she can do is play Karuta, and that's the only thing she really loves doing. So she thinks it's kind of stupid to do anything else because that's all she wants to do. And the show's about everyone kind of coming around to the fact that, yeah, she should play Karuta for the rest of her life or for however long she wants to. I'm talking too much about Chihara when I should be talking about the MVP of this episode, and that's motherfucking Tai Chi. Tai
Go
Chi.
on.
Yeah, Tai Chi. Look, at the center of this show is a love triangle between Chihaya Faru, Arata, and Tai Chi. Two guys who cannot be any different. The only thing that kind of keeps them together is that binds them is their love for Karuta, and Chihara, apparently. But Tai Chi is the one in the triangle who lives with the fact that he's not going to win, that he knows Chihara is not going to choose him in the end. And he still loves her anyway because he can't help it. So even though he knows Chihaya Faru will never choose him, he still has his love, and he still chooses to be with her and play Karuta because he just can't help it, because he can't help his nature, because that's who he is. I also like Tai Chi for like his personality beyond that, because he's the smartest of the kid. He's top of their class, and he has this great memorization tool. And he's really smart, and the way that he plays Karuta is very full of precision and analytics. And I just think he elevates this anime for me because I feel for him. I want to see more of his story, and I love his interaction with Chihara and the rest of the cast.
So here's why Tai Chi's not my MVP. So I think the fundamental problem with Tai Chi is he has what I like to call perfect boy syndrome. So he's pretty, he's smart, he's good at sports, I guess. I think he's good at sports. And everyone likes him, and he's cool. Now, the only thing wrong with perfect boy syndrome, though, is that it usually is paired with a boring personality. So what you say about Tai Chi is compelling, and on paper it sounds good. You know, I think you said that Tai Chi, who's so good at everything, chooses a sport that he's not the best at.
No,
and
he's not.
that sounds very compelling. That sounds like a really good idea. But I don't think we really get to see enough of that. And then you also say, you know, Tai Chi knows that he's not going to be with Chihaya, but he still decides to play Karuta because of her and to, you know, be with her and stuff. Again, on paper, that sounds really good. But in the show, from what I saw, and I only saw season 1, I know you saw both seasons. From what I saw in the first season, I didn't get that sense at all. I thought they were going for like a love triangle where maybe they're gonna get together because they share a few moments, Chihaya and Tai Chi, where you know, Chihaya touches her hand, or no, Tai Chi touches her hand, and then Tai Chi takes her cake and eats it in front of her, some silly thing like that.
That's more romantic on paper.
Exactly. So the implementation of his character, I think, really needed some work. And when I say he has a boring personality, I'm comparing that to what he was like as a kid. As a kid, like Kid Tai Chi was way more interesting to me because here's a guy who, yes, you know, he's still perfect at everything, and he's still good looking. He still wins at everything, but he's also insecure. And when someone comes along like Arata and you know, is about to kick his ass at something, he's not above cheating. He ended up, you know, stealing Arata's glasses, and you know, we find out also that he's got kind of like a helicopter mom, you know, a mom that kind of like sets everything up for him for success. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of get a real good sense of the character. You know, here's someone that has some conflict with himself, but on the outside has everything. But when he gets older, he's nothing like that. He's just a sort of a docile. He's confident. You know, I think he's grown out of his insecurity a bit more, but that also kind of makes him less interesting to me because now he's just like this cool, sort of brooding, smart boy who's good at everything and is basically just puppy dog attached to Chihaya. So that's kind of why I didn't really like Tai Chi. And you know, I won't talk about the other cast, but I think they could have done a lot better with Tai Chi.
Okay.
So my MVP is Arata, and to me, he's the MVP because every time his presence is known on the screen, the show just gets way more interesting. And I think the reason for that is because it kind of brings the show back to when it was at its strongest. Like I said, when it was at those first 3 or 4 episodes, when they were kids and it was like more of a trio rather than a duo, it was way more interesting because you actually got to see these characters play off each other in a way that made them all more engaging to watch. So when Aruta was on screen and he was interacting with Chihaya and Taichi, and all these old feelings rose to the surface, this love triangle actually becomes like a real love triangle. It just makes it to where I actually end up liking Chihaya more. I actually end up liking Taichi more, specifically because of like these inner conflicts and these conflicts between the characters, this sort of unspoken love and unspoken emotions flying between them. But not only that, Aruta himself is just more interesting because, as a kid, he's this shy guy, and, he doesn't really come from like a rich family, but man, he loves this obscure sport, and he's the reason why Chihaya or Taichi or, anyone in the main cast really are playing the sport. It's because the love of the sport was sparked from Aruta himself, and he was really the catalyst for the whole series going forward. Later on, when you see him as a teenager, he's a little more cynical, and he's not playing the sport anymore. And there's a really good reason for that. And the reason is because he was into the sport, and he ended up going to a competition and leaving his grandfather when his grandfather needed him to take care of him, and he feels a lot of guilt for that. And I just find that very compelling. And the fact that he, came back to the sport, I enjoyed watching him return to the fold and see him enjoy his old passion again. And even on top of that, you can like the animation, I think, of Karuta becomes really, really interesting to watch because up till I guess Aruta comes in, you don't really see many fancy visual flares in the sport of Karuta itself. And you know me, I like visual flares in my sports. And when Aruta is playing, you get to see that because how Chihaya describes Aruta as playing is he plays like water. It's like very calm and serene, but very intense and powerful at the same time. And as she's describing him play that, you see like this cool blue watery aura around him, and it looks really beautiful and all that. And I wish we just saw more of that kind of style throughout the whole show. So in general, Aruta's my MVP, mostly because he makes the whole show better every time he's on screen.
And that's totally fair. I think Aruta is a really great character, and he makes up a good point on the love triangle himself. Just the reason that he's not my MVP is because I wanted a little more from him out of the first season and the second season. He's just not. He doesn't factor into the story a whole lot as much. He's more of a presence, more of a shadow, like looming over everybody. And Taichi's the one that's there. Taichi is involved and with Shihara every day. That's just why I like Taichi a little more, but I do think Aruta's a great character. And just at the end of the day, we're just never going to see eye to eye for this anime. I'm going to love it, and you're not.
And that is completely fine.
That is.
So yeah, let's move on to our next anime. The next anime is Keijo.
8 exclamation points.
8 exclamation points. It was episode 4 of our fledgling podcast, and we were already delving into the world of fake sports.
Huh. Yeah.
And this was a fun one to watch. It's memed as sort of like this anime with the titties and ass, and that's exactly what it is, and it knows it, and it plays to it with great effect. They are very creative, offensive and defensive moves, which involves boobs and butts. And at its core, it's basically just a battle anime, but with a lot of fan service.
Yeah.
And I guess I couldn't ask for more from an anime. It was fun to watch. But who's your MVP for this one, Kobe?
My MVP for Keijo. Honestly, this was a fun watch, but it was hard actually remembering these characters. Like I had to go back and look over these names and for what they did. But I think the MVP of Keijo, 8 exclamation points. It's always important to say that. Is Sayaka Miata. She is the kind of the co-lead of the show. She was the character who kind of entered this sport with a past other than it. Like, she was a judo champion. Her dad was a judo champion, and her parents wanted her to be a judo champion more than anything. But she found out that what she wanted to do is play Keijo for some reason. And kind of, she's the MVP because her arc throughout all of the first season is kind of getting her parents' approval. And there comes a real cheesy, really funny moment and just absurd moments near the end, which makes her the MVP when she's like wins a match with her, with her parents watching, and her dad's like the stereotypical stone cold disapproving father, like, no daughter mine's going to play Keijo. And then he like sees her play and he's like, that'll do. Like, you can do what you want, follow your dreams because you're really good at this sport. But the ridiculous aspect about it is the fact that it's a sport where you use your boobs and your butt to knock other females off of it in really silly ways. But she was a character throughout that she was a good contrast to the protagonist, who I thought was a little too annoying at times, who didn't have much of a personality. And whenever the protagonist, who I don't even remember her name, got too overboard, Sayaka was able to like rein it back and make the story interesting. So I watched this mainly for Sayaka, and she was the thing keeping me coming back for more.
Yeah, Sayaka was a really good co-lead. She's your typical, cool, cold character. And she had the special ability of like pulling up her underwear really tight, which gave her lots of
ultra
speed
wedgie
or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, she was cool. I enjoyed her a lot. My MVP would be Kazana Aoba, and she's the girl with the ponytail, and she's the tactician. She's the MVP for me because I think she's the cutest one of all the Keijo girls. And I like a good tactical play in my sports animes. I like it when you use more brains than brawn. And in an anime where it was basically mostly brawn, she was the only character that had some strategic element to her powers. And her power was basically like she could like touch girls' butts and then gain their power, or like know what their power was. She could like sense the wind or something like that. Basically, her powers were all very like mental, and that's what I really appreciate about her character. Also, I think she had the most interesting growth in the series. She started out as sort of like a very shy character, so shy that she couldn't really even say anything because she was afraid that people would make fun of her accent or something like that. And then by the end of the show, she became like a leader. She was coordinating attacks with the other athletes. I forgot what they're called now.
Butt warriors.
The other butt warriors, Yeah, she was able to stand toe-to-toe with some of the best butt warriors just from her clever use of the battlefield and her knowledge of both her opponent's abilities and her allies' abilities. Also, she has the best power, in my opinion, which is the Gates of Budilan. And, it's these things that make you love anime, Like, you're not going to get portals with butts flying through them in any other kind of medium, and I really appreciate it for that.
You're right. You actually might have changed my mind. She might be, because the Gates of Budilan is a direct reference to the Fate series, because there's the Gates of Babylon is one of the characters. Gilgamesh is like it's his special move where he summons swords out of many different portals.
Mm-hmm.
So, man, okay, you might have changed my mind. Actually, she might be the MVP of that series. I might have to go back and watch Keijo again, to be honest.
Just to watch the Gates of Budilan again.
Just to watch the Gates of Budilan. So you're right. What was her name?
Her name was Kazana Aoba.
Kazana, yeah, Kazana. There was 4 main characters in Keijo, and even though the protagonist was an okay protagonist, I think it's the side characters of this anime that really made it at least fun to watch, because they were all different enough to be relatively interesting. And you're right, she was one of the best out of the 4.
All right, so she's the MVP.
I think so. I'm going to change mine. I'm on team
Kazana. All right,
team Kazana.
Sweet. But yeah, I guess there's not much to say about Keijo. It's a very simple show with very simple pleasures. And
it was. It's just fun. There's nothing. I think that anime episode was one of our shortest, because we just got through what we wanted to say, and we're just like, yeah, anything else you want to say about this? Mm-hmm. We're like, nope. Like, that was it. watch it or don't.
Exactly. Yeah. These kinds of animes don't tend to make for the most interesting podcast discussions, but at least for us, it's not a chore to watch. So that's good.
It was not. Like some of the later ones we'll get to.
Can't wait to talk about those. So yeah, the next one was Haikyuu, number 5.
Boy.
This was a powerhouse sports anime, in my opinion. This one hit all the right notes for me. It was intense. It was like, what's that word? Like white knuckled action. You know what I mean? Like you're on the edge of your seats for all the volleyball games, and it has a great cast of lovable volleyball boys that go through very good arcs.
Great progression throughout all of it. And you're absolutely right. It's the only anime that we've watched together that's like I've been literally, my heart is beating in my chest for like some of those matches when it comes down to like one of the final points. Like it's so well done how it grips you. And it stands as a high point. I think like Ping Pong has been our only 5-star anime that we've done, but Ping Pong is such like a separate entity than like all the other animes that we've watched.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always think of Ping Pong as like it's separate on its own, but Haikyuu, it very falls in line with all 11 or 12 other animes that we watch. But out of these like 11 or 12 besides Ping Pong, Haikyuu is number 1 because it does everything right. And there's a reason why every time we watch a show now, we usually always end up saying, yeah, they had this element, but remember when Haikyuu did the same thing, just like a little bit better? In every single element that we've done, Haikyuu has just succeeded. So it's hard to pick an MVP for Haikyuu. Who is the MVP for you?
The MVP for me is definitely Kei Tsukishima, and he doesn't really get much screen time until the second season, and when he does, though, that's when he really comes into his own, and you see him at full power, his true potential. Basically, his arc, in a nutshell, is this guy who's cynical, sort of apathetic. He's not very enthusiastic about volleyball as his team members are, and there's a reason for that. But he eventually becomes that. He eventually learns to love volleyball again, and he learns to become competitive again, and to have a goal for himself, and to be a kind of ace in his own way. Because what Kei Tsukishima's special ability is, he's really good at blocks. So to be a good blocker, you got to be tall. Okay, so Tsukishima has that, but he is tall. You also got to have like some fairly good like reflexes. Like you have to be able to know like where the ball's gonna go, where you think the ball's gonna go, and you have to be able to like manipulate that. So like in the third season, Tsukishima he begins, or was it the second? Either the second or third season, he begins to coordinate the blockers, and he notices a trend in like the spikers from the opposite team. And he notices that they always come down, a certain direction. So if they block that one direction, they sort of limit its path so that it goes down just one narrow corridor, and that way their main receiver, their libero, can catch it a lot more effectively. And so, again, you know me, I love tactics, I love smart thinking. So yeah, he fits the bill in all those things. He's got a great arc, and he's a very tactical, smart player. And also, he's got like the coolest themes. If you listen to like he's like the moon guy. Like the moon is like his symbol. If you listen to his music on YouTube, it's kind of like that heavy synth music, and which I don't think you hear in any other soundtrack in that show. So yeah, he's great.
He is a great character. The thing about Kei Fukushima is the show takes its time with him. Like for the first season, he's really the most unlikable, underdeveloped character. Like the show does nothing with him besides the fact that he seems like he doesn't want to be there. Like he's the only one who, and that was my only problem with like the first half of the season. Like the first half of the first season was just like highlighting teamwork, and like the coach is like, we all need to work together. But Fukushima was like directly contrasting that because he was making fun of all of his teammates. He was like mean to them, and he didn't seem to care with what he was doing. But for the show to slowly introduce to like why he is the way that he is and why he functions to where he ended up, to someone who like loves volleyball and who finds the joy in it, is just amazing. His season 3 like cheer once he makes a huge block, and shouts to the heavens because he finally found the joy of volleyball is just one of the most well done moments in a show full of great moments. He's great just for the fact that it took so long for him to be great, and then once you peel back all of his layers and you find that he's one of the most fascinating characters on the show, and for the third season to completely kind of pivot to mainly focus on him. The third season is mainly his show for like the first 6 episodes or 5 or 6 episodes. It's like all him, and there's good reason for that because he's great to watch, and he grew into such. I'm repeating myself. He grew into such a great character.
Indeed. So is he your MVP then?
He is not my MVP.
Ooh,
I know. My MVP of this episode is someone who kind of followed a similar track, who started Haiku as kind of a background character, someone who lived in the shadow of Kei, who didn't have anything to offer the team. I'm talking, of course, about, as the characters say in the show, Yamaguchi. Yamaguchi is a character who starts off as the loser. He's a first year and he's the least talented on the team. And he realizes early on that he is not going to be at the level of everybody else, but he sees how everybody else is trying really hard and mastering something. So he takes a different tactic. He's like, I'm never going to be someone like our the 2 main characters. But I'm going to get good at one thing that nobody else can do. So he practices really hard and nonstop about the. He's a pinch server. That's the role that he eventually fulfills. Someone who's called in later in the game to just serve and then just gets taken out immediately. And he practices a really special kind of serve, like the dead ball serve, the one where the ball goes without any spin and drops sporadically, so the enemy team cannot know where that is. And his arc throughout the first season is just him practicing. And at the end of the first season, he fails. He gets put in the game and he attempts it and he fails. And that's, you think, oh, that kind of sucks. But then you see over the course of the second season and the third season, his rise into being able to use that serve effectively to the fact where he's dangerous. And episode 20, I think, of season 2 or so, episodes 21, where he gets put back into the game after a period where he was afraid of not wanting to do that pinch serving because he was afraid of failure. And then he starts succeeding, and he gets one, and then he gets another, and then he gets another point, and then all the crowd's chanting his name, and he finds the confidence in himself. And eventually, when he gets taken out of the game, he's a completely changed character at that point. He wants to fight. He's lost all of his nerve, or his bad nerves and his nervousness that dominated the first 2 seasons of the show, to the point where a really great Yamaguchi moment is I think it was in the 3rd season where the coach is standing, in the ended episode, the coach is standing on the sidelines, I can feel you gazing at me. And it cuts to Yamaguchi, and he has this aura about him where he's burning with intensity because he's put me in the game because he just wants to. So his arc from nobody who stood behind Kei for the whole season to emerge as such a MVP for the team and helped him emerge as an MVP for the show. Yamaguchi. Haiku.
Yamaguchi.
Yeah. When they shout that, one of the best.
Yeah, no, I really like Yamaguchi as well. He's just a great example of he's really inspiring, to be honest. He's a guy who, like you said, he's the loser of the team, but he still wants to play, he still wants to contribute, and so he just does one thing, and it just shows you if you can get good at one thing, you can find your spot on a team. And
that's a good message for people like us who are probably bad at sports.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess also he taught me about a position in volleyball which I knew nothing about. That they have servers that they bring in purely to score easy points on the team when they need it. So
which on paper seems like that should be allowed. You can't just bring in somebody whenever you want to just
switch them in and switch them back out. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, regardless, the Yamaguchi Fukushima team duo, like you said, is a great example of characters that the show really took their time on, and they eventually evolved into characters that could arguably be even more interesting than the main duo, which is Hinata and Kageyama. They're a great duo in their own right, but I feel like Fukushima and Yamaguchi really give them a run for their money. So
especially they're MVPs in their own right, but they're also great interactions with each other. Their relationship evolves in such a dynamic way throughout the 3 seasons, where you kind of realize their backstory and why Yamaguchi looks up to Kai, and how Yamaguchi also inspires Kai to kind of find more passion for the sport. So they really work in great codependent with each other. So MVPs.
Yeah, they got a good history with each other, and that really shows. All right, so the next show is Prince of Stride Alternative, and this is a parkour anime, which sounds awesome because you don't really see parkour in any medium really. So yeah, it's a mixture of like parkour and like track and field. It's like a parkour race basically. But overall, pretty underwhelming. Would you agree?
It was. I agree completely. It had moments where I thought this was going to be a really good one. There was a good turning point around like episode 8 of this anime where things get really interesting for a second, and we're just like, oh man, I'm actually really excited to see where this goes, and then it just completely drops the ball. I don't know if it's because we just spent the time watching Haiku like right before it, so we were off a high of a really great anime, but it just made me dislike Prince of Stride even more because the fact how it just completely mishandled its plot, its pacing, and a lot of its characters. It's not bad. It's really not, but it's not a must watch. It's one of our skippable ones, I think, on this list.
For sure. There's a lot of shows, because it's one of those short shows. I think it's only like 12 episodes or 11 episodes or something like that. There's quite a few better alternatives for animes that have the same length as Prince of Stride. It is all over the place, and its characters are really nothing to write home about, which makes, I think, choosing an MVP a little difficult. But in any case, who is your MVP for this show, Kobe?
My MVP for Prince of Stride Alternative is Ayumu Kadawaki. Ayumu Kadawaki is basically, he's the nerdy character of the group. Basically, a rundown of the show is that their Stride team at this school doesn't have enough members to begin with, so they've paired with the Shogi Club, which is like a domino like card game, so that they both stay alive. And the only member of the Shogi Club is Ayumu, and their stipulation is that Ayumu has to run races, and they also have to play Shogi. So he's the character who didn't seem very good at the sport at first, but then through all of his practices and his training, he kind of got to be at least a competitor. He has to be at least an option when it came to members of the team. But he's the MVP of this episode because he has the only really great character moment, I think, in the 4th episode where he decides that he values this team a lot and he's going to do whatever it takes to win, and he's not going to give up, even though he's not very talented. Like, he has the stamina, but he's just not as good as the other members of the team. So he even attempts to try something risky, and he crashes and he falls, but through sheer force of will and just determination, he gets himself off and he hobbles to the next person because he doesn't want his team to lose the race. It's a really nice moment, and it's the only memorable moment for me of that show. He's also a character throughout the rest of the season. He kind of falls in the background, but he's also really funny. He's like the comic relief, and the humor of the show didn't always land, but I think enough of it landed for me to say that I think it's a funny anime. But when I say it's a funny anime, I only think Ayumu is the funny one. Because anytime he was on the screen, he usually said a joke, and he was hilarious. So that's why Ayumu is the MVP for me.
Well, Kobe, I am in agreement with you. Ayumu is also my MVP, and you pretty much hit all the points I was going to say. Yeah, he's involved in probably the most memorable moment of the show. Like you said, he takes a risky gamble, and typically in I guess shows in general, it's like when they make a risky gamble, some stroke of miracle allows them to survive, and they actually everything turns out okay. But in his case, things don't turn out okay. He, like you said, he crashes. He's slightly injured, but even so, he still continues to run forward. And that moment made me think, wow, is this anime good? Like, is it actually going to be good from here on out? Because it showed that it was capable of very good moments like that. And also what I liked about that, too, was when he when he passed on the relay to the next runner, he just collapses on the floor, and he says like run or go really fast or something like that. And then when the last member of his team finishes the race, the first thing they do is I think they win the race. I'm not sure, but the first thing they do is they don't celebrate. They run right back to him. So it's a really good example of like it's a good moment of camaraderie, I think, and it really made you like these guys. It made you think, okay, these guys have a genuine relationship, and and like you said, he's the funniest guy. The other guys, they try to be funny, but like it doesn't really work as much as Yumi does. So yeah, I have really.
He had just one really great joke. I think it's one of the funniest jokes out of I think any of this anime that we saw that I have to mention because it's hilarious.
I remember this one.
It's I think it's the great joke out of any of these animes. It's he's about to race and he's up against a competitor, and all of a sudden he goes into a spiel. Ayumu starts talking about my sister is dying. She's sick in the hospital, and she said, "Brother, win the race for me." So now, so I will do whatever I have to win. And then like the other teammates turned to him and was like, he doesn't have a sister, does he? And they're like, no, he doesn't. He's completely lying. It's a complete Shakespearean performance. And then his opponent looks him in the eye and says, that's so honorable. I promise I will try my hardest. So you deserve that win. So you earn that win no matter what. He's like, bah, backfire.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
Yeah, that's a good joke right there. I like it.
Good joke. And the rest of the anime,
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah, if you really like parkour, and this is the only show out there with parkour for you, then I guess you could watch it. But even then,
it doesn't even have parkour.
Yeah, it really doesn't go into the moves that much. And I was hoping. Whenever we watch a sports anime, I think you and I share this. Like, we want to come out of it knowing a little bit more about the sport, and maybe even being able to like hold a conversation about it. If we watch it on TV, we'll be like, oh, that's that position, and they're trying to do this. But with parkour, they don't really go much into like, I guess the technique, what the names of the techniques are. Yeah, they don't really talk about running that much. I don't know. It's just not a good show, I guess.
It's if you like parkour, but don't really like parkour. Like if you want to just parkour, but like not super into it.
Yeah, it's one of those shows where it's like the person who wrote it must have been like, yeah, you know what's cool? Parkour. I'm gonna make a show about that, even though I don't know anything about parkour. I just know
about
what it looks
jumping
like.
Stuff, right?
Yeah.
But our budget isn't high enough, so let's just show like shots of people running, not jumping over stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But that's enough shitting all over Princess Stride. Let's move on.
Time to shit over another anime.
Yeah, let's shit on this one. It's called Aokana Full Rhythm Across the Blue. Now, I believe you like this show more than I do, and I actually think you convinced me to raise my score a little bit on it when we reviewed it.
Yeah, by half a star.
Yeah, like half a star. But generally, I think I've already forgotten most of this show, and I guess that's a testament to how I feel about it. I wasn't really into it. Do
you even have an MVP?
I have one written down here. I do.
Yeah.
But what's go ahead.
Ayakana was an interesting show for me because Ayakana started off as, it's a made-up sport filled with girls with high-pitched voices and kind of scantily clad outfits. Like, you kind of, through the first few episodes, you know what you're going to get. Like, you kind of get the vibe that it does. But then, what I liked about Ayakana is that it started to subvert your expectations, and just in tiny ways at first, and then big ways, and then it grew into a very deep, not very deep show, but into like at least a deep examination about loss and about coping with things like loss and grief and trauma from the past. And it did so in a very mature way where there wasn't like an easy fix for any of it. I'll talk about this with my MVP. My MVP is Misaki. She's introduced as the character at the very beginning who has a past with the sport of flying circus, which is flying circuses. You have gravity boots and you're kind of hit these buoys or you hit your opponents. Basically, you're flying through the air really fast. And she had past with it, and then she learned that she quit. And then she kind of comes back to it. And her middle arc in the show, I think, is a great character study because she thinks she's pretty good at the sport. at this point. She retired because she lost a passion for it, or she lost. I forgot which one. I think she lost.
She became outpaced by a new person, right? Is that part of it?
Back. That was the new, because like here when she goes back to the sport.
Oh, but this is beforehand, right? Okay.
Yeah, beforehand when she first was playing, I think she was so good that she lost interest. She didn't have the passion for it. So then when she comes back, she plays somebody and she gets completely destroyed. So it shatters everything she thought she knew about the sport. She thought she could beat this guy, and she couldn't at all. But then she's even brought down a peg even lower after that, where she finds that guy who destroyed her completely wasn't even trying, like in the slightest. So that brings her down even further to the point where she quits the sport. So that's like a double whammy to her for a show that I didn't expect. And then it kind of follows her as she's struggling to find her next purpose. And even when you think that she gets that impassioned speech about returning and impassioned speech about getting over her loss, and you think she's going to be okay, what does she do? She quits the team even further. She quits it completely. She walks away. So it's throughout the show, her character continually surprised me with her maturity. And I say maturity, like it's just this grain of maturity in a show surrounded by girls with high-pitched voices flying around on boots. So that's why I think Misaki is the MVP of this anime.
So that's I really like Misaki as well. I think she would have done better as like the main character versus the actual main character, pink haired chick. I don't remember her name, but because she was sort of a Mary Sue in a way, because she was just good, and that was it. She's just so good at this show. And before I was talking about how forgettable the show was, and this is a testament to how forgettable it was. I literally forgot about it. I didn't write down an MVP.
Yeah.
So I just went to the wiki just now, and I'm picking one, not at random, because I actually do remember this character, and I think it's a fairly good reason why I'm picking her. Her name is Mashiro Arisaka. So Mashiro, she's the fangirl of Misaki, actually, isn't she? She like follows her around and stuff like that. And so she can be annoying and she can be grating, but the reason she's the MVP is because she rises above that. You know, usually when a character is annoying to me, they kind of just stay annoying for the whole show. But in her case, she actually has some commendable qualities about her that sort of endear me to her. So what I mean is she's not the best at this sport. What is the sport called again? Gravity boot
Flying
sport?
circus.
Flying circus.
Flying circus. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's a circus or somehow. So anyways, Mashiro isn't the best at it, but she does try. She wants to be a valued member of the team. It's kind of the Yamaguchi. It's just kind of the Yamaguchi character, I guess, if we're going to.
Great comparison.
Yeah, because she wants to contribute to the team. She doesn't want to hold back the team, so she tries her best to improve. And her thing is she improves on the basics, on the fundamentals. And it's a really good way of showing the viewer how to actually get better at the sport, because we didn't really get that with the main character because she was instantly good. And so I'm glad that Mashiro was the character that actually showed us, you know, so the training component of it and the actual basics. Like, how does this work? And you could see that within like an episode or two, he becomes a much smoother flyer. She becomes much more confident, and she's able to compete a little more effectively. I don't think she ever gets really good, but I still like her for her effort, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I like her too, just because it's the show doing that subverting thing again. She's a really annoying character at first. She's the slave girl. She calls herself the slave girl. But the fourth episode is almost completely devoted to her, someone who I thought was just a completely ancillary character, someone who wasn't very important. But then, and they make that fourth episode, I think one of the best. It's one of the best to me of the series of the series itself, just because I enjoyed her struggle. You know, first she quits, and then she feels like she can't do it, and then she's more motivated. Then she finds a mentor who teaches her, and just like the amount of detail they put into her into that story arc was really good. And it was at least the turning point for this anime to me to make me start liking it more. And she would probably be the second MVP in my book.
So yeah, that was Aokana. There wasn't really much to say about it in general. We spoke a lot more about it in the podcast, but like I said, I forgot most of it. Let's move on.
It's not. Yeah, we want to move on to Aokana to move on to the next one, which is, I think, it turned out if Haiku was like one of the best out of the ones that we saw, I think Baby Steps is also is the best, but it's also one of my favorites. Like, I loved Baby Steps and just how it continued to grow from the first season to the second season. It was the most technical out of all these animes, where it really dives into the sport. Like, every single aspect about tennis they talked about, and they really got into the moves, and the strokes, and how the main character got better. So I loved it. I loved Baby Steps. I'll say it once, I'll say it again. I loved Baby Steps.
I agree. I love Baby Steps as well. I think Haikyuu is definitely like a gold standard for sports animes, but I could also say Baby Steps is probably a gold standard, like in its own way. Maybe it's a silver standard. I don't know, but
yeah, that's right. It's like I was thinking the exact same thing. It's like a silver standard, but it's not separate. It's like in its own category. It's like the technical category. Like, and it's like if Haikyuu is the sun, Baby Steps is the moon. You know?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. That's a really good way to put it. I completely agree. Baby Steps, like you said, goes really deep into every single aspect of the sport, to the point where it makes you think about other sports. Specifically when it goes into the training and the conditioning, when it goes into the mental aspect of it. It makes you think, like, I wonder what it's like for other sports. Like, I wonder what kind of physical training they went through. Like, how does the mental game affect into these other sports? And really, I think you can learn a lot about sports in general just from watching Baby Steps. Yeah, it's very understated, I would say. Where Haikyuu gives you like that heart throbbing, adrenaline filled action, Baby Steps gives you a different sort of investment. It's sort of like a very the stakes are lower, but you're just as invested in it, which is odd. Yeah. Because in Haikyuu they kind of jump straight into a tournament, whereas in Baby Steps, you follow Eiichiro's journey through his whole high school career. Actually, like, he starts out as a freshman, and then like by the end of second season, he's like in his third year, which is kind of funny to think about. Like,
yeah, wow, yeah.
I think I mentioned this to you, where like Eiichiro is like the same age as Daichi and Asahi from Haikyuu, so it's like, yeah. It's interesting to think about these things, that like, in some unified world, they're like they could meet up and they'd be like the same age and maybe hang out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like Baby Steps as well. It surprised the hell out of me, I'll say that.
It's great in its progression. Like, I know one of our biggest problems with Haikyuu that we talked about, even though it's a great anime, we talked about how the fact that it's not really interesting to play these teams again. Like once we see all the teams that they played, it's like, I'm not really interested in watching them fight again, or do anything else, because they won't have learned. It's going to be the same thing. With Baby Steps, between its first and second season, he replays a lot of the people he played the first season, but so much growth has happened between both Ichiro and whatever character he's playing that it makes the match kind of refreshing and new, and that's what I really respect about the anime itself. But even though we're talking about all the technical great aspects of the anime, I think we both have the same MVP for this one. And it doesn't have anything to do with the actual sport, really. Who's the MVP of Baby Steps?
The MVP of Baby Steps is Natsu, Nat-chan. It's the love interest of Eiichiro. I think something that's pretty severely lacking in a lot of the sports animes we watch is that there's not a lot of very strong female leads, and Natsu is a really strong female lead. She really feels like her own character with her own ambitions. And the romance subplot between her and Ei-chan, I think, is one of the most satisfying ones to watch, just because of how realistic it feels. Like, it's not cutesy, it's not over the top. You're not gonna get scenes where Eiichiro trips over and like accidentally touches her boobs or anything like that. It's it's handled in a very mature way, in a way where I can believe that these two would actually like fall in love with each other, and it moves at a very nice pace. Like it doesn't take too long for them to get together, and they don't get together right away at the same time. So
it takes its time. Yeah,
it takes its time. It takes its baby steps. And again, one of the strongest aspects of the show is that the progression it's long and steady, and it's engaging every step of the way. And that's very hard to do, I think. I think it's, like you said, it's just a very technical show in every aspect that it can get, and they can hit all the story beats right, and the sports beats, and the relationship subplot. It's just it's a very well-timed show. But yeah, anyways, Natsu, great character. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more can I say about Natsu.
What I liked about Natsu is that she comes across at first like any other female protagonist, where it's like she's there's a tendency to make any fun, kind of happy and go lucky individual kind of ditzy, kind of unaware of the environment around her. Natsu is fun and she's bubbly, but she's not dumb by any stretch. She understands exactly what's going around her at all times, and she's also very driven and passionate in her desire and pursuit to become a pro tennis player. But what's great about her relationship with Ichiro is that she clearly knows that he likes her. She's not dumb in that sense at all, but she's waiting for him to man up and actually tell her, like, because if she tells him that she likes him, then that's a cop out. Then that's not him taking the effect himself. She wants Ichiro to grow as a person enough to admit it. And then that evolves anymore. Instead of stretching it out for like the whole series, which the show easily could have done, early on in the second season, they have Ichiro kind of admit, or like try to tell her that I like, and then he's interrupted by Tenko? Tenko? Yeah, whatever his name is.
Big guy.
Big guy. He's interrupted by her, and it's a funny moment, and then it's like, oh, you think it didn't matter. But then like a few episodes later, Natsu asks him out. She's like, do you want to go out with me? She's like, what? I thought you wanted me to wait, or you wanted me to tell you. She's like, dude, like you said it to me a while ago. I'm not dumb. Like you said I I knew what you were going to say. So like it counted. The attempt counted.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, so every step of the way, Natsu proved herself to be a dynamic, evolved, and just very great co-female protagonist for the show. Probably one of the best because there's not really a lot of female protagonists or actual love interest in a lot of these sports animes that we watch, because there's no, usually they're all devoted to the sport. The main character is always devoted to the sport. But what's great about Baby Steps is that it's kind of like a metaphor. His playing of tennis is like how he's growing in his personal life. So, of course, as he gets better at tennis, his ability to talk to females and Natsu and have, adult relationships with people also evolves. And that's a sign of a really great anime, and especially a really great sports anime. So Natsu just solidifies herself as the MVP of both of Baby Steps, and also I would put her into the running as the MVP of Anime Ricochet.
Whoa, really?
I'll say that.
Dang.
I do, because
I didn't even think about that.
All these other,
maybe I should think about it.
All these other MVPs like all fall into the same category. They're all the same type of MVP, but Natsu just, I think, stands on her own for what she brings to the series, and also the fact that she's the only character of her kind.
Yes, I completely agree. She's, like you said, she's bubbly, but she's also not stupid, and she's ambitious and forthright and honest. She's just a really strong female lead. And also, another thing I wanted to mention is like her, like she's cute, but like they don't portray her how anime usually portrays like a good-looking female character. Usually there's fan service involved whenever a character is supposed to be like sexy or attractive. But with her, we kind of see her from like just from like Eiichiro's perspective, just sort of like a rose-colored lenses, I guess. That whenever he looks at her, there's like sparkly glitter everywhere, and she's dressed up in nice clothes and all that. So I guess that's just, I respect this anime a lot, and I respect Natsu a lot. And I guess the biggest compliment I can give to Natsu is I wish that we had like a Natsu centered episode, because we actually
we
get into the backstories of a lot of characters in Baby Steps, but actually I don't think we get to dive too much into Natsu. So maybe, hopefully, if they do a season 3, hopefully we get to get more Natsu, because she is definitely a great character and a great MVP. And Yeah, no, she
Agreed.
Like I said, baby steps really surprised me, and I think that's part of why I like it so much. But yeah. So the next anime on our list is Kuroko's Basketball, and this is a show that you don't like, Kobe, and I think I like it a little more than you do, but I think we both have the same general problem with it. I think that the characters are not very interesting. Like, basically, they had the potential to have a team of, like, super-powered basketball players, which I think is a cool concept, but instead of doing that, they split them all up and made them all rivals, and then you have a core of main characters. I think the Generation of Miracles are actually the main characters, but when they split them up, they kind of they fucked it up basically, because now you have to focus on them all individually and as enemies as opposed to proper characters. And I think this really shows itself when you see a flashback episode where they are actually a team and they are actually all comrades in arms basically. And that's a really good episode. I really liked it, which kind of pissed me off because I wish the whole show was like that. Instead, we get Kuroko and we get I think his name is also Kageyama or something. But basically, the big redhead guy, which is not as interesting. And then their team, which are not the Generation of Miracles, is boring, and they all look the same, and they don't stand out. And then there's Kuroko, who's like he's the namesake of the show. He's like the boringest motherfucker ever.
He's the wrong character to focus on. Absolutely.
There's a lot of things wrong with the show, but Kobe, what do you think?
Look, I think the first season of Kuroko no Basuke is a dumpster fire. I think it's okay. You're right. Maybe that's a little harsh. It's not bad. The reason I dislike a show is not because it's bad. I'm fine with bad shows because if it's bad, it's bad. But I get really mad at shows when it shows wasted potential. And there's so much about this anime that could have been good, especially with the Generation of Miracles. And on paper, I think it's a good idea for a show. It's like, a few years ago, there was a Generation of Miracles. There was these really great players, and then they all split up and did their own thing. And now we're following, one of them as he's part of this new team, and he's trying to build his own team to take on basically each member of this Generation of Miracles who all split up and to do the one thing, to show that the power of the team is better than the power of the individual. Like, on paper, I think that works. I mean, I think I can see why they made this anime and made this manga, and I can see... Well, I guess I can't see why. It's one of the most successful sports animes out there. And we only watched the first season, so maybe it gets really good after the second and third season, something that we'll probably find out shortly. But the first season is just such a mess when it comes to character development, just the sport itself, through choosing what to focus on and what not to. It's kind of boring. It's kind of... The matches are sometimes lackluster just because you don't really understand exactly what's going on. And the main characters who you're focused on, the team of Kuroko and Kageyama, are just the wrong characters to focus on. You're absolutely right when you fact that this should have focused on anybody else of the Generation of Miracles. To the point where they had the flashback episode, it's like kind of like an OVA, and in Crunchyroll, if you're watching on Crunchyroll, they just stick it into the random lineup. Like if you're watching it, binging it, it goes 22, and all of a sudden it jumps to 22.5, and then it goes to 23. Like I haven't seen that happen in any anime I've watched on Crunchyroll before. Maybe it happens frequently, I don't know, but I do know that those last 5 episodes switches the perspective to Ray, or the blonde-haired kid, who turns out in those 4 episodes to be way more interesting than Kuroko or anybody else on the other team. And it just makes me mad that we didn't focus on him or anybody else throughout these 25 episodes. So that's why I think Kuroko no Basuke failed. Period. Mic drop.
That was really intense. Yeah, you basically nailed it on the head. I guess my only other gripe with the show too is that the main thesis of the show is that teamwork is really important, and Kuroko is trying to show that, because his special ability is basically an ability that only works with a good team. He's really good at passing the basketball, and so that works. It's okay, here's a guy who's only good at passing the basketball, and he thinks that teamwork is better than the individual. Basically, that's his thing. And yet, whenever his team that he's on currently is facing a clutch moment, they don't say, okay, let's work together as a team and go through this. No, they say, Kuroko and Kageyama, it's up to you two. You know, Kagami, not Kageyama. Kuroko and Kagami.
No, Kagami, yeah.
You two are going to be the guys responsible for winning this game. So, you know, go at it, basically. And it just runs in direct conflict to what the show is trying to be about, which is about teamwork. And it's hard to take it seriously because the main team, like I said, the character designs themselves kind of speak for how generic these characters really are and how little we know of them throughout the series. But anyways,
I was just gonna say we only watched the first season. Maybe in the second and third season we're actually going to implement like maybe the first season was about how they're only focusing on these two, and that thinking is wrong. So the second and third season they're going to expand to be more of a team. That's left to be that's to be determined. But just for this first season that we're judging it on, it does not do a good job. Like I think it fails. But who knows? Maybe there's a full picture out there.
Right. So, anyways, my MVP is Ryota Kisei. And I say Ryota Kisei is my MVP because towards the end of the show is when it gets really interesting. And I think it's really the only part of the show where I got really invested in the anime for like the first time. So like the last 4 or 5 episodes, it's really about, and this is telling, of course, the last 4 or 5 episodes do not involve Kuroko, do not involve Kagami, the main duo. They involve Ryota Kisei and his rivalry with Daichi Aomine. And so basically Ryota Kisei's ability is that he's able to copy other players really well. And then Daichi's ability is that he's just a really good street baller. Like he doesn't play conventionally. He has very unconventional movements that are hard to predict and hard to maneuver around. And the reason I really liked Kisei in these moments is that he's got a really good backstory. He's got a really good rivalry with Daichi. And the way that his team supports him and the way that he grows in front of our eyes in the middle of a game, I thought was really entertaining and really cool because by the end of the game, Kisei was, this whole time, Daichi's like, the only one who can beat me is me. And so, obviously, we take Kisei's powers to their logical conclusion. Kisei copies Daichi and is able to stand toe-to-toe with him because he's able to use his own powers against him. And I thought that was really cool. And, that's who my MVP is. And also, he has a lot of character. He's a cool guy. He's like the pretty boy guy, but like, he has some flaws, and he's cool.
I completely agree with you 100%. He is the MVP, and we can move on because the less we talk about the first season of Kuroko no Basuke, the better.
Okay, all right. Then let's move on to the next anime. It is free ! Iwatobi Swim Club, and this is a anime about pretty boys and swimming. And I did not like this one.
You did not like Free.
You liked it though, right?
I did. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
But mostly, I don't think I think it did what it set out to do, which is, provide girls with some pretty fan service of some pretty wet boys in the water. And have like a cute,
pretty wet boys in the
bro-y relationship. Yeah, have some kind of like cutesy relationship between these dudes. But I didn't really hit me on any level that I wanted it to. I wasn't invested in them emotionally. I wasn't invested in the plot. I thought most of the characters were pretty uninteresting because it's kind of all over the place. They don't really focus on like a main character that often. And if they do, I guess it would be the rivalry between the red-haired guy and the dude that loves to swim a lot.
Rin?
See, I don't even know their names.
Haru
and Rin, yeah.
Yeah, you don't even remember the names.
What did you think?
You're right. Free is made for a very specific audience, and I think there's a large proportion of people who won't like it, and there's good reason for it. Like, I understand everybody who doesn't like it just fine, but there's a certain fun, soapy quality to the relationships between these 4 pretty boys, wet in the water, and their relationship with their enemy Rin. And what I like ultimately about Free is the fact that it has a villain, but the story isn't about them beating the villain. It's about them bringing the villain back to their side. And I think at the end of the day, that's an interesting story. That's one we don't really see a whole lot in these sports animes. And sure, it doesn't always succeed in its mission, but I think the humor is fun. The characters are quirky enough, and the animation is just beautiful. So my MVP for this episode, out of the characters, is Ray. He's the guy with glasses out of them, and he's the one that's new to the sport. And I think really in some alternate dimension, he's the main character first and foremost because he's the one most new to the team. He's the one who has no experience with swimming. They recruit him because they think he's really talented, like he's this track star and he has a good build, and they think he's going to be really valuable to the team. And then when he's kind of experimenting with it, and then they make him swim, and he completely fails because he falls flat on his face because surprise, he doesn't know how to swim at all. So then his arc throughout the first season is kind of learning to swim, which takes some time, and then training really hard to be anywhere near the same level as everybody else. And it's something that he works really hard at. He does so with this type of, I wouldn't call it cockiness, but I would call it maybe arrogance, because he's that type of character. He's a glasses character in an anime. It means he's always pushing his glasses up and saying something how he thinks he knows better. And I think a lot of the time that doesn't work, but I think in this instance it did, just because, I don't know, for whatever reason, if it's just the writing was just a little different in handling of this character. Probably because they made him more human and they made him fail a whole lot before he succeeded. And that's why I liked Ray, and I think that's the reason why Ray is the MVP of Free.
I agree. Ray is also my MVP, and he is my MVP because I think he faces the most development as well. He's, like you said, he starts out as a guy that's kind of your typical arrogant nerd boy, but eventually he learns to face his inability to swim, and he learns how to swim, and after that he becomes like a very supportive member of the team. He's the one that has the least amount of history with the other characters, which I think gives him a very unique perspective, and I think it really helps to have that kind of outsider character sort of bring the team together. Because I think towards the end, he's the reason, one of the main reasons why Rin came back to the fold, because Ray was sort of that fourth player, and then he talked to Rin, who was the other fourth player, and was able to kind of give him a piece of his mind, which I think helps with Rin being able to get back on the team, because Ray gives up his spot for Rin to be able to swim with his friends again, which I thought was really cool. So he becomes he starts off as sort of, I guess, very arrogant, and he becomes he ends up being a selfless character in the end. So yeah, that's why I like Ray. Okay, so the next show is Welcome to the Ballroom, and I know this is a show that I think both you and I were very excited about because it was about ballroom dancing, and the closest reference anime we had to this was Yuri on Ice. These are both like performance-based sports, and so I think we were excited to see another sport that was like Yuri on Ice, that had some cool like dancing animations and stuff like that. Unfortunately, I don't think Welcome to the Ballroom delivered as well as it could have. There is some cool animation. I think the animation is actually very beautiful, but we don't actually get to see a lot of dancing because the way they animated the dancing was not very fluid. There was a lot of cuts in between the movements, so you couldn't really get a good sense of how the dance was actually constructed and how it's moving to the beat of the song. So it was very disappointing. At least in my opinion. But what did you think, Kobe?
Oh, I completely agree. I think for the most part, this anime failed because it took so long to get going. The first half of this anime isn't engaging enough to make me want to keep watching. And I agree, the animation is beautiful and kind of like in a different way. It's very sharp, it's very harsh, and they do a lot of cool stuff. But the way that they portray the dancing is very lackluster at the beginning, and they make a lot of choices that they probably could have done in 4 episodes instead of 12. And that first part really hurt it overall into why I was disappointed in this anime. But as we transition to who both of ours MVP in this episode of this anime, around episode 12, they introduce a second protagonist. Her name's Chinatsu. She turns out to be the main guy's partner, and who he starts to pair with. And as soon as she's introduced, the show, I think, immediately becomes better because she just elevates the material. I know it's a coincidence, but the dancing and the animation gets better. Like around her, like more thought is put into the dancing and to basically the whole show. But overall, her introduction creates conflict and a great back and forth between the other main character about how there's like a fiery kind of passion between them, about how they both kind of either like each other or are at each other's throats because they're both kind of so different in how they do things. Throughout the first 12 episodes, we know that the main guy is a follower more so than a leader. He cannot lead. And when Chinatsu's introduced, she turns out she can lead very well. She just can't follow. And I don't know what happens. These two have to be paired together and they have to dance. It's great conflict throughout the final 12 episodes. And I just wish more than anything we focused more on her or even focused on Chinatsu from the beginning. She is a show saver, in my opinion. Without her, I would have probably disliked this a lot. But now I just think it's okay and tolerable.
Yeah, she's my MVP as well, and I think even she might be Tori's MVP, who joined us on that episode for Welcome to the Ballroom, because as you said, the show was not very good up until Chinatsu was introduced. And in terms of like female leads, I know we were talking about how Natsu was a really good female lead, but this one, Chinatsu, coincidentally enough, is also a really good female lead. She's a very forthright and, again, in your face. I guess not Natsu from Baby Steps wasn't in your face, but Chinatsu is in your face. But she's ambitious and she has her own motivations, and she's able to stand on her own 2 feet as a strong character in the show. And she's also the one, like you said, saves the show. She has a great dynamic with the main character, and overall is a more interesting partner than the first partner that was given to what's his face?
I don't even remember the main guy's name. What's his face? It doesn't matter. He's not important. He freaks out over everything and
yeah, he's just too much, as you say. So moving on to the last anime, we've been going on for so long now. Well, here we are at the very end. We are going to talk about All Out with 2 exclamation points.
We've gone all out.
We've
gone all out in our discussion here.
So yeah, All Out was I think it started out very strong, but then as the show went on, the focus on the characters was very muddled. And I think this is because and I think you mentioned this in the episode that like that's kind of the point of rugby, is that there is no star player. Therefore, in the show, there will be no star player. We're going to focus on every single character, and everyone's going to have a backstory, and you're going to know at least a little bit about every single character. And it's a big-ass team, so you learn about... It's probably the biggest cast, actually, out of all the sports animes we've reviewed.
Oh, yeah. There's like 15 members that try to get screen time.
I think it didn't work for me.
No.
I wish that they focused more on like a core group of characters, and then maybe develop the other characters maybe in like subsequent seasons. Kind of like what Haikyuu did.
Yeah.
And then also the stakes were very low. There usually in sports animes there's like a tournament to build up to, and there's some stakes involved there. But in this show, in All Out, there is no tournament. It's all practice games to the very end, which is a very strange choice if you ask me. And also it's the anime I think with the most filler that we've seen out of all the sports animes. So yeah, that kind of knocks it down a few pegs to me.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if this was supposed to be a slice of life anime or a sports anime. It doesn't do well with its introduction of characters. Like pretty soon characters will try like quitting the team, and like later episodes, and then they'll make really dramatic moments out of it, but it'll make you think, wait, who is this guy? Like, why should I care? Like, I don't know who you are at all. So that's why the MVP of this episode is somebody who I think we both agree with is somebody who's not on the team itself. He's kind of an outside presence. He is the coach of this rugby team. He's a crotchety old man who gets emailed by this high school kid, the main character, who's just like, hey, can you come coach us? And this old guy is just like, sure. So he just kind of walks onto the field one day and tells the coach, the captain of the team, "You're training them wrong. What are you doing? You should be doing this." And he's very gruff and he's very no nonsense. And then all of a sudden he takes over their training and he teaches them a whole new way to go about rugby. So under this guidance, they start to thrive. Because all the other characters on the team, we didn't get a lot of development on it. The coach is definitely the MVP of All Out.
Yeah, I would say that out of all the sports animes we've seen, the coach of All Out is the coachiest of coaches. He's the dad.
Coaches.
He's the father figure of this ragtag group of miscreants, and that really shines through because he disciplines them and he trains them, and the team looks up to him, and I think that's really cool. But my MVP would have to be Ibumi Masaru.
Oh, okay.
So he
Different.
is. I like characters that have a bit of an edge to them. Like this guy, he could have easily been like a bad guy if he were on any other team. Just looking at his design, he's like a wild-eyed, crazy dude. He's got crazy spiky blonde hair. His eyes are like huge with like little tiny black dots for eyes. So he doesn't look very trustworthy. And he's aggressive, but he's on our team. He's on the team that we're rooting for, and that's why I like him. I like having like a monster on the team that we're rooting for. He's the guy that can like completely humiliate another person on the opposing team, and I just find that very satisfying to watch. But beyond that, he's a thug with a heart of gold. Like he'll talk down to like his teammates and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, he's still one of the hardest working team members, and he also is willing to give his teammate money, like if they need some monies for the training camp.
One of the best individual moments of that show was that instance where Ibumi gives the devil-haired kid money so he can continue to play, because he knows how much it means to him and he knows how valuable he is. So even though he has that rough exterior, someone who's not afraid to walk into porn shops as they constantly portray him and be like, "Oh, hey, you shop here too?" Like not afraid about who he is. He has a good sense of self, like about him. Like he doesn't have like a lot of inner conflict. Like he just does whatever he wants and thinks he's awesome but will do what he has to do in order to help his team. So out of all the characters, I agree. Out of all the players on the team, you're right. I think he's the best. But just because of lack of development on him, like overall, like I wish I had more about him, like stopped him from being the MVP, and why the coach was more of an MVP for me. Yeah,
overall, they're both really good characters. And I think that's it. I mean, I think we did it. I think
we talked through MVPs of all of our animes.
Yeah, this ended up being a lot longer than I expected, but I'm glad we got through it. And from now on, we're going to be talking about MVPs in all of our future Anime Ricochet episodes. So be on the lookout for that. And
yeah, we're currently getting through a really long anime right now. So that's why we thought we'd had this filler episode, kind of just have a little fun with it, go back and review everything that we came before, and talk about something we haven't talked about before. So thanks for listening. If you listened, if you didn't, then I don't know who I'm talking to. But yeah, where can they find us, Jeff?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter. On Twitter, we are at the Nerd Blaze. On YouTube, we are also called Nerd Blaze. I think it's on YouTube. I think it's just Nerd Blaze. And we've got a new Libsyn website. We've moved all our podcasts over to Libsyn. So if you just look up Libsyn Anime Ricochet, I'm sure you'll find us that way. It's animericochet.libsyn.com. And did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I think that's just about everything.
All right. So hope you guys had fun listening to this one. Next month we're going to be reviewing Yowamushi Pedal, reviewing seasons 1 and 2, because apparently season 1 doesn't finish the whole story. So we're going to make sure that we have the whole story before we dive into it. So we'll see you guys for that one.
Huzzah! All right. See you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.